Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepointe Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepointe helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Okay, so we're a few years removed from the pandemic. Obviously, it changed the way we work and communicate. Zoom blew up as a necessary collaboration tool to support an at-home workforce. Teams was already on most desktops, but lightly adopted. It rose to meet the Zoom challenge in a lot of ways. As an IT leader or consultant, you have been rationalizing those tools against the backdrop of existing telephony investments and perhaps relationships with well-respected UCaaS players for a few years now as we all return to hybrid work. And now, interestingly, is WebEx part of the discussion? Well, at least that's what this week's guest believes. Mike Nowak of BCM One is a returning guest here on the show. In fact, he was guest number 2 years ago. And he believes that while necessity may have driven our pandemic collaboration decisions, convenience will drive our long-term strategy. And with an embedded base of call manager seats in the millions of endpoints, WebEx may just be a part of that conversation. Cisco is certainly focused on making it convenient. And if you love the convenience of having our real-world usable enterprise IT conversations delivered right to your phone or laptop, please hit that subscribe button here on YouTube or follow The Bridge with Scott Kinka on your favorite podcast platform. But for a discussion around the emergence, or better yet, re-emergence of WebEx in the collaboration and communications discussion, here's BCM One's Chief Revenue Officer, Mike Nowak. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Bridge. We are thrilled that you are with us today. To our listeners and actually to our guest, Mike Nowak is a returning guest with us. Mike is with BCM One. Mike, tell us a little bit about your role there. Remind our listeners.
Scott, it's great to be with you, and thank you for having me again. Sure. My role, I'm the CRO of BCM One.
Yeah.
Been with the company here 4 years. It's been an awesome journey. I oversee the strategy of BCM One. I have a hand in sales operations, acquisitions, and go-to-market execution for the company. So great to be with you.
We're going to get into all of those things today. And we touched on all of it in our pre-show. But before we get into that, before we get into business, let's double click. So we're going to go back. Mike, you were guest number 2 on The Bridge, which our producer, Gene, just reminded me of. We recorded in July of 22. So it's April of 22. So it's almost 2 years ago. We're now on episode like 54 or something along those lines. So you are not only I think you're the second returnee, but you're the first one where it's been like from the first. I'm not even sure we knew how to do this.
Well, I was wondering.
We recorded the first episode. We might have had to reschedule 3 times because the tech wasn't working. So that was pretty amazing. Welcome back to The Bridge.
I had so much fun on it, Scott. I said, did I do something wrong? Because how come that I wasn't asked back again? So
well, we'll get into that because we did have BCM One on one time in between, and we'll explain why that is and why you weren't maybe necessarily the guest on that one, but you did an unbelievable job. And we'll harken back to some of the things that you said then because it's really great to get a backwards look. However, I asked a fun question in that about like what you would prefer, like would you prefer to be a number 2 in a rock band, like the bass player in a rock band, or like a running back on your favorite football team or something along those lines. And you told us about your love for the Detroit Lions, and you predicted back then, a great year, upcoming year. And, while it didn't result in a Super Bowl, I have to give you some credit for your football prediction skills there, because it was the best Detroit Lions year in many decades.
It's unbelievable. And our fans have been waiting for so long, Scott. It was just a joy to have a playoff win. And we got two of them, two
Yeah.
playoff wins. It's like the holidays. Amazing.
Well, maybe you'll be at that point where the Eagles were, where like playoff wins were just racking up, but we weren't getting over the hump for a decade and a half. So it's fun at the beginning when you start winning playoff games. And then when you're like, how many times are we going to go to the conference championship and not make it to the promised land? So, we got our one. We'll take that. So all good there. And at the end, I'm going to come back to something else that you said in the middle of our last episode, but we'll come back to that at the end of this. For now, here's what I want to catch up with you on. So we had you on your episode 2. In between, we had Jeff Bloss on, right? And we had him on, Jeff's the CEO. We had him on right around the acquisition of Pure IP, which was a big moment for you guys. And for those who are not familiar, Pure IP, at that time was probably one of, if not the best known sort of Teams voice integrator globally. An early entrant into the Operator Connect program, certainly one of the earliest who were doing direct routing, just really understands that market. And it's become core to the overall BCM One offering since then. So that's the reason why you didn't end up in the interim there, but now we get to have this fun 2-year distant episode. But I'm curious, let's just chat a little bit about Teams. How at a high level, just how transformative has the Pure IP acquisition been for the conversations that BCM One is having on a day-by-day basis?
Significant, absolutely significant. I think it's been transformative because I think one is, there's so much movement there for one, Scott, and I feel like we're really good at it. I mean, especially when you take our skills and you know your target market and you can spend your time on it, and that target market is the same target market of our other core service of managed connectivity. It's been awesome for us, for our identity, and it complements so well. And we've been able to execute with it and take an acquisition that was based in the United Kingdom and New Zealand and bring it to the U.S. channel and integrate it to our sales teams with policy and sales operations and post-sale support. It's been awesome.
Mike, I know you to be very active in the field, and we've engaged on deals together, frankly, with those mid-market customers. How often are you still, many of our listeners are CIOs, so I think they want to see themselves in the stories that we tell about other customers, right? How many of the customers that you're meeting with in the mid-market and enterprise are still in the executives love their Zoom meetings, 3/4 of the company's in Teams, and we still have this, insert PBX name or hosted provider floating around? Like, is that still a situation where most businesses find themselves?
I think so, Scott. I think it's what I'd call a mixed environment still. There's, just like any curve, there's folks that are aggressive with where they want to take their business. There's other folks that have what I'd call obligations that they can't get to make a centralized decision. And there's sometimes baggage you've got to deal with, maybe from prior decisions that you made or so forth. But it's a mixed environment. I would say we've been extremely busy with the folks that want to plow forward with Teams. That was really big in 2022 into 2023. And then what we've seen towards the last part of 2023 and going into this year was WebEx. WebEx had emerged, and there's a compelling reason for folks that if they're not going Teams or WebEx, those have been kind of the dominant ones that we see. But still a massive amount of organizations that have ideas that where they want to go, but they can't free up the time, or they don't have a compelling reason to act yet.
Yeah.
And you have these mixed hybrid environments and folks that are experimenting maybe with one of the platforms.
So you mentioned the name there. I think that a lot of people forgot about. I mean, unless you're a call manager customer. So I mean, we'll come back to Microsoft because I have a few more questions there. But let's
Yeah.
explore Cisco. I mean, I've spent much of my career in the Cisco voice ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they have multiple products, and they've had the premise-based products, and they had the BroadSoft acquisition, and they were driving service providers, and they were trying to bring them together, and it was certainly a policy. I've got many friends over there, many who were still there. I think they've always felt like they needed to unify that strategy faster, better, more plainly. But I think as a result of that, they frankly didn't take advantage of COVID in the same way that perhaps Microsoft and Zoom did. What's now driving WebEx back into the conversation in your mind?
Yeah, I have some strong views on this.
Okay.
I think if you look at, I think there's a commonality that Zoom, Teams, WebEx all have, and that same commonality is what's driving WebEx actually today. When you look at positioning of a product, convenience can be a dominant driver for success. And I think you could argue Zoom and Teams were extremely convenient for folks to jump into
Yeah.
during the pandemic. And I think Cisco invested heavily into WebEx. It didn't have the convenience factor of a Teams or WebEx. I'm not here to say that WebEx has a better feature set. It may or may not. But one thing that I have seen, especially in the last, call it 6 months, especially, are organizations that do have, especially the bigger organizations that have the on-premise call managers that had worked
Yeah.
well for them for years. They have extreme convenience to move to WebEx, and Cisco has packaged it in a way to make it convenient. And I've seen folks do that because of incentives Cisco provides and so forth. So I don't know if I would say I see WebEx eroding team space as much, but I'd say Cisco's done a nice job on their convenience play, and it's driving a lot of sales.
Yeah. So maybe it doesn't erode the Teams market share, but it helps ensure the legacy Cisco market share, perhaps in that model. Is it just convenience there, or have they made it inconvenient to stay with the call manager platform and not adopt WebEx as the front end UI?
I think that's probably a wise way to say it. Is they've made it. I'll give them credit and say they've made it attractive to move to WebEx. And
that was a beautifully politically crafted answer. I'm the one now who's going to get the angry text message after this one drops. Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, we know, Cisco had a lot to contend with that they had to bring together, and they've got multiple distribution communities. They have VARs out there who have been driving call manager for so long, trying to convert over to get, this was also about them getting into the annuity business, where the others were already in a subscription side. They were in a selling maintenance against annuities. Like it was a very complicated problem to solve. But I do think the fact that, you guys as a kind of powering provider to the big collab stacks, for you to sit here as the CRO and tell me that Cisco's entering these conversations at least implies the strength of the brand and the strength of the embedded base, even though they didn't take advantage in the same way of sort of the COVID, convenience opportunity that the others did. For them to be entering back into the conversation is an interesting one. And do I think about the way that you power these WebEx opportunities in the same way that I think of you powering Teams opportunities? So it's a WebEx front end, but you are on the back end from a dial tone perspective.
It is. And I think you kind of look at us as an agnostic player in this. We have the certified trunking resources. So Cisco CCP certified trunking into WebEx, just like we're Operator Connect for Teams, or Zoom, I think Marketplace is the status. Mm-hmm. We're agnostic. Usually our role is to make sure that you actually do recognize that the feature set that you're getting is going to come from that voice platform that you pick. But all of our trunking services will work the same, and folks want that assurance that you're certified and fully interoperable. and that's what we provide. So we're agnostic, and it's really the same way. And we do, oddly enough, have some of these are, again, very large organizations. They have Teams, WebEx on the same trunks that we provide, and on-premise equipment. And so you can get some unique hybrids, especially these very large companies.
I'm going to come back to that blend in a moment, because I think that's a bigger conversation. I don't want to miss the, I'm going to also be politically correct with this. I don't want to miss a question about the Cisco zealotry, right? That's out there maybe. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, do you find that the Cisco WebEx conversation on the front end is not just convenient for the end users, but, generally my experience is that people who are running call manager were the people who were, the legacy guys running switching, routing, firewalling, right? And sort of came over and took over the telecom in there. So one, there's just kind of a lot of zealotry is maybe the wrong word, but let's just say culture around Cisco. That's one. And then two, there's also just a honking big pile of devices that have the Cisco logo on them in these giant enterprise businesses. Do those also lead into the convenience factor? Not just kind of the UI and the familiarity for the end users, but the engineering resources also continuing to manage Cisco and the end user devices kind of remaining out there.
I would say first, Scott, for the listeners at home, can you define zealotry?
The zealot would be the person who's going to go to the mat for the particular thing that they're in love with. Generally, it's associated with religion. In this case, I generally mean that people who are Cisco lovers, it is religion. I mean, let's call it what it is. We've all met those IT guys, some of whom are probably listening to this call. Or, you
come here to learn. You come here to learn. I just learned something that's great. Yeah, I
there you go.
I think there are folks that are true believers in Cisco's.
Nice use, true believer on the zealotry there. I like the combo. Excellent.
They're true believers, and folks like it, and I think it's opened the doors. We just presented to a very large manufacturer that has a trucking division. It's a manufacturing company, trucking division, and the manufacturing organization says, we are going Teams, and we are going to deploy this summer, and we're going to move all 3,000 users over. Trucking company says, we want to stay with Cisco. It's easier for us to do it. We like the environment. We frankly like Cisco best. They're going to fragment it. Now that's how they're going to do it. And that group has zealotry for, I'd say, Cisco on that side.
Got it. I love it. Now you're making me feel bad. Like I'm going to be on like dictionary.com after this. That I use that word.
I like it.
Did I douse myself?
I didn't mean to call you out.
No, you're good. Anyway, I'm having some fun. So let's explore that situation, because that one's interesting, right? I mean, I think there's this idea because, I read a Gartner stat coming out of the back of COVID, and I can't believe we're still having these like COVID comms conversations in April of 24. But the reality of it is the technology cycles, particularly on the legacy call managers, many of these things have been in for 12, 15 years. So it's not like 2 years is going to cure that. But the stat basically said that comms expenses increased 30 to 40% during COVID because of duplicative expense in similar tools. Mm-hmm. And we're running into those situations now. Now, the challenge is you have different user groups like the one that you just mentioned who, feel for different tools. And at Bridgepointe, we're doing a ton of consulting and just walking people through what are the actual features that matter? Like, is this, if you had to rate, phone usage, file sharing, chat, and email in terms of order of communication in your business, what are they? Like, all these things ultimately drive the decision that a business makes. That said, you guys deal in large international international businesses who, frankly, there's not all that significant amount of calling between regions, except in specific cases, you can handle that with just making sure that the international dial plans are right, like those types of things. I want to make sure that I understand what it was that you were mentioning a little while ago. So you've got a customer who's got, a call manager. Cisco's making it convenient to go towards WebEx. You've got a group that wants to go to Teams because they've adopted that. Maybe they're more chat centric, file sharing centric, et cetera. You're splitting a trunk. I mean, you're porting a hunk of numbers that are probably right now are running on a PRI into that call manager. Yeah. You're grabbing the whole hunk of numbers. Some of them are going to the OC platform, and you're turning those phone numbers up literally inside of the Teams, admin portal. And others are terminating on WebEx, ultimately driving down to the premise-based PBX, which is potentially remaining in place. Is that the way I should read that?
It is. And how it's done, and where the skill comes in is SBC resources and SBC command. And these are cloud-based SBCs. So we know if that's one of our core competencies is our worldwide SBC, cloud-based SBCs, that we can deliver your traditional TLS trunking into Operator Connect Teams or UDP, SRTP, encrypted trunks, for those that like acronyms, to their call manager, or at the same time. And so what the use case that happens in these bigger companies, they're never going to make a hot cut. They don't just cut it over. They'll say, let's bring over some of North America and the other, and so that we may start off with powering their call managers and Avayas on premise, and they buy 1,000 trunk lines or call paths, and they start to peel off and have us point to Operator Connect for a portion of them. And then the question is, do you want us to do some magic to 5-digit dial between the two foreign systems? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that's kind of how it starts. And I see, we have these old PRI circuits are out there that folks still have, that the rates are going up. No one wants to carry those and have the maintenance on those. So the rates continue to go up. They want you off of them. And you don't know where you want it. You don't know, have your final decision. So you don't do anything. You're paying massive costs. And our point would be just future-proof yourself. Just get to BCM One, future-proof yourself. Get those trunks and let us power your call managers and Avaya systems. PRI handoffs if needed, and then you can just flip to WebEx Teams or do a partial. It's really easy to do, and those SBCs are what allows us to drive all that.
So you used that example you gave was a business transformation, right? It was like they're not going to flip the switch; they're going to keep premise-based infrastructure going and then move to. Are you finding that there's opportunities where the permanent state is some combination of Teams and WebEx, or I mean, they're going to go there?
Indeed, a case that was near and dear to my heart was a university in the Northeast. I heavily was engaged on it. It was a passion project, I would say. They are going to keep their Avayas on premise for as long as they can for admissions. Any admission calling that comes into the university, they're going to keep that. And then they're going to, and billing and admissions is how they're going to handle that. And then they're going to, or I guess I'd call it accounting. And then they're going to put faculty and staff on Teams. And then they have a big portion of their staff on WebEx because they had these HCS seats. They had to get a home for them. So they have this hybrid that'll all collapse into Teams eventually. But that on-premise equipment, they don't have any plan to shift it. So there'll always be a permanent state. And so think of them having SRTP, secure trunking into the on-premise gear, and then the rest of it is WebEx Teams until they push the button to flip it to all Operator Connect.
So aside from the 5-digit dialing kind of work combos, which are generally done in dial transformation at the SPC level, like are you getting asked to help them with directory integration and things like that so that the same users show up on the Teams, the Avaya users show up in the Teams directory? And like, are these the kind of things that you guys are getting involved in, helping from a consultative level during the business transformation?
We do. I call it managed teams is what I call it.
Okay.
I don't think our marketing team has officially agreed with that name yet.
You did. It's legitimate now. It's locked in. We're going to call it that. You've just printed it with the press.
We've had to do it for many years, and so we built up a team, a worldwide team of specialists in house. What we find is that the large enterprise, I'm talking the Fortune 500, the London Stock Exchange top 25 type organizations, they do have skills in house. They have folks in house that will be pretty arrogant about their skills, and they don't want any help. But as you start to go into probably more of a mid-market play, there are more folks that say, I want to get there. I don't have the time to do it. Can you just handle it? And so this is where, it's a lot of the work on the front end is it's dial plan set up, it's call flow set up, it's preferences set up. And then it's like, once it's in, can you do my moves, ads, changes for me? And I just want my IT staff to call you and be confident in it. So they might want to interview us, but it's something I didn't see, I didn't recognize, and I didn't frankly leverage very much when we first started to get to know Pure IP, is that the firepower of that. But there really is a need, especially in that mid-market, of day-to-day management of it.
No question. I mean, the first place people don't realize that are in the way of getting the Teams calling set up is like, if your AD's a mess, we're not getting numbers like we gotta make sure that Microsoft is clean first before you so neatly go into the Operator Connect portal to just drop down a user and attach a phone number to them, right? Well, super. I have two quick questions. One, this could be a yes, no. Does this side by side also include doing bake-offs? Like if you had a customer who was like, I can't win the Teams versus WebEx, or the team versus Zoom conversation, one trunk group, stand them up next to each other, give them 3 months, they'll pick one, you guys will transition everybody over to the other. Do you ever run into those scenarios?
Yeah. I mean, I just see it where folks sometimes will run them at the same time, where they may be a Cisco environment and someone says, can I peel off some resources for Teams? And we don't care. It doesn't matter to us. We just need to know what trunks you want us to point over to it. I have seen it where an IT group may gravitate to one or the other, and they want to run it themselves. And I've seen IT groups do that. They want to have it their way, and they may have the rest of the company on something they don't like as much.
Perfect. Let me one more question on the team side, and then I want to jump over to your network aggregation, and your network management business for a moment, because I have a question there that I want to sort of reflect back on your answer from a couple of years ago. But before we get there, let me ask you a question about Teams. I mean, there's a little bit of fervor going on around this whole topic of the bundle, right? And Microsoft's going to, not include Teams anymore in the Office 365 bundle, or that'll be optional. And and I love the way you said it earlier, like they took advantage of convenience, right? Zoom was free, and I guess you could say Teams to some extent, and they had to catch up during COVID, right? I mean, you couldn't even have a video conference that had more than 3 or 4 people on it when COVID started. They moved quickly, but either way, it was convenient because I don't want to say free. You were paying for a bundle that included it, but similar thing, right? Do you think that this bundling thing is really something, or unbundling thing, I should say, that will affect Microsoft's market share, or are people understanding that differently or incorrectly, let's say?
Yeah, I think it was a lightning rod topic, I guess, in earlier April. But I think when folks realize what the finite points of this is, and the term grandfathering, I think is the critical statement. So if you already had the inclusive bundle worldwide, you're grandfathered in. So second point of that is, how many of these grandfathered folks never turned on the phone? And it's a massive portion of the world has done that. So I think when you look at Microsoft, I think folks there are very sharp. They're 3 steps ahead in a lot of cases. I don't sense their blood pressure has gone up. I don't think they enjoyed the entanglement, but there's a massive amount of investment of dormant phone seats. And then you got Copilot that, I heard Microsoft say it this way, is that Copilot, do you really want a fragmented AI strategy? Why would you want your voice calling, meetings, conferencing, everything separate, and not have it integrated with your AI? And so I think there's a strong belief that Copilot will drag that in anyway. And I think they feel some results there. So I think it may be a little noise I think it's maybe more noise than what it really amounts to.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, there's multiple topics at that level of fervor. You know what I mean in the marketplace. Like I just finished taping the episode that will air before you, and it was just us capstoning like 4 episodes in a row of trying to unpack the whole Broadcom VMware thing, which is something real, but it you couldn't shake your keyboard at Google without bumping into that topic over the course of the past 6 weeks. All right, we just jump over just quickly to your network, to the managed network business, the aggregation business. I mean, you guys have really a global footprint from a network provider perspective. And when we talked a couple of years ago, you were talking about how busy you were on that because the footprint of businesses had changed, sort of post-COVID. Not that we were necessarily closing brick and mortar, but the big locations were becoming less important. People were going home. Some of those home locations were important. They were trying to build strategies around them. How do you bring them into the fold for the executives? Like that whole story. Has that, we're not all the way back to work. I don't think we ever will be, but certainly businesses that have real brick and mortar storefronts are back to work. How's that changed? Has that changed yet again your network business, sort of the footprint of the network business?
I think I would look at it. There's a couple indicators I'd look at. One is, we have a lot of footprint with a lot of locations, and you look at, are you seeing behavioral change where folks are shutting off offices? And oddly enough, I would have thought you probably would have seen more of that, Scott. I haven't seen that. So, okay. I think that's where I would have missed. I would have thought a lot more. I guess I'd call it shrinkage. I guess of footprints. Haven't seen that. What I have seen, I think, is cost has become probably a bigger issue to organizations. There's probably more pressure to look at cost, and multi-vendor, multinational vendors, multiple MSAs is becoming a cost issue for folks. It's a soft cost issue and vendor consolidation. So I think where we are pretty fortunate about is the idea we can provide, and we've expanded out with direct fiber providers in a lot of the world to complement our expansive pure IP reach. So I think that's kind of where we see it, but haven't seen the office closures that I guess I would have thought that we've seen. Haven't seen necessarily downgrades. I think if anything, you've seen upgrades from data demand. Mm-hmm. And probably on our side, more appeal to, especially financial companies, healthcare companies that are going to scrutinize their network providers.
And that's an interesting one because that kind of scrutiny generally happens way above the layer 2 portion of the network. So, just clicking back on that, we're in a market now where you can buy your network intelligence completely separately from your access provider, or you can get them together. What's the driver for you guys right now? Like, are you providing fully formed private networks, or you're providing access and you're seeing over the top intelligence for edge, security network being put on top?
It's really, it's majority of it is third party over the top. Folks have made decisions. I mean, we'd like to be a part of that if we can. I think I'd like to say customers like us once they get to form a relationship with us. We lead with our Versa service, Versa SASE. That's what we lead with. Yeah. But it's not been uncommon, and I'd say it's probably been more dominant, is that folks have found their provider, and then they want us for the connectivity side, and that's fine with us. That suits us just fine.
Got it. Okay, well, that was a brisk 30 minutes that we just ran through to get caught up. So great having you back, and it's been great to catch up after 2 years. But I want to let's end with some fun, and we'll look back 2 years on one particular topic. So a couple things. We've added some new questions to the end of this. The first one is a little bit more business oriented, but what are you reading right now? What's on the end table? and anything that you can share with our listeners.
Yeah, indeed. It's interesting. I was just talking to someone about this. I've always tried to stay current, and I would say what has changed for me in the last, I'd say, several months is I've gone back to revisit some of the books that I really enjoyed that I may need a refresher on, and
Yeah.
and I will not. It's a difficult read for me, but one that I've been going back and forth with is The Art of War, and I just The Art of War is for me again. It's a difficult book to.
There's a copy of it. I'm only looking over here because it's in that pile right there, Gene. I literally keep it directly under the Holy Bible, right there, under the box. No, to the right of that, right.
But
It's literally it goes the Harvard college college handbook, the writing handbook, which nobody needs anymore with AI, but I lived in it. The Bible, and then The Art of War, right, like literally just below it. And then I think there's one of the Harry Potters underneath there someplace. I have no idea. Anyway, it's a great read, but it is not light reading. Like it's
tough. There is a skinny version that simplifies it, but
yeah,
I love the idea though. The stuff that I guess the takeaways from there, and energy without strategy is chaos, and I've really been stuck on that. Lately, energy without strategy is chaos, and I'm maybe too fundamental, like everything is strategy and no wasted time. But I love what you can learn out of the book.
That's amazing, and that could in and of itself it's a whole episode. I will definitely, when I do the intro to this episode, point to the book over my shoulder and mention that you mentioned that. Whatever it was, close to, I guess now probably 20 or so months ago, we asked for a prediction from you, and you had a couple things in there, but one of the things that you were highly focused on was business automation. You're like, we're going to be 18 months from now, and we're 18 months from then, we're going to be having awful lot of conversations about about automation. I think we're having a lot of conversations about AI today that are generally centered around automation, but care to connect back to that? Do you feel like you've been validated?
Well, I think I made a mistake in that I should have said AI, and I didn't capture the right. I didn't want to capture.
Well, I honestly think you got the number one. To be frank, I'm going to flip it back on you. I think you actually had it more right than everybody who's talking about AI. And the reason I say that, and we've talked about this in a lot of episodes, is that AI is like the new cloud these days. I was literally with our board a day ago, and I looked at them and I'm like, listen, not you guys, but we're talking to customers every day who are there. They have like board edicts who are like, go do AI. I don't really know what that means, but okay, I'll go get some. Like it's kind of the same idea we were running into in cloud years ago. People moved all these workloads that didn't need to be moved because they had these corporate edicts around, go get us some cloud. I like that you said automation 20 months ago, because the reality of it is you were down in the business case that we're actually solving with these technologies. Is that kind of what you were thinking at that time, was just sort of the business process?
I think I look at Scott like just market pressures, like, it's always to make decisions, what's happening today. But as Wayne Gretzky said, you skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it is. And you look at indicators of where things are happening. But if you look back then, it was very high costs of labor, lack of labor. And then you looked at, challenges to keep up with productivity. And so it was just begging for some kind of productivity boom. And you see that gap and you look like, we're going to fill this. And is AI going to fill it? I think it adds a lot of value for productivity, of course, and optimization. So, that's a way, but you see indications of it. But anytime, I always think market forces prevail. You have high cost labor. Folks are going to find a way to solve that issue. And that's kind of led into, in a more advanced automated society that we have.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, it was a good one. I'm going to give you a yes on that. Your prediction was spot on. Last one, and then I'm going to let you go. We've talked quite a bit about the business effects post COVID, and I'm not having fun with COVID when I say this, but let's just say the next big, alternative future disruptive event occurs. Maybe AI maybe Skynet descends on us. I'm not sure which one that is, but our lives are forever changed. One application works on your phone still. You get to pick which one. I didn't ask you that last time, I don't believe, right? I did ask him that. Oh, I did ask him that in addition to the 3?
Yes.
I probably didn't have a good answer for it, but it's like, I'd start with, what do I spend all my time on the phone? And it's, besides email, I guess I would say, it's my escape, Scott, is I like to look at what's happening in the sports world. I mean, I'm a huge Detroit Lions, and if we're at the end of the world, my teams probably aren't playing anybody. But man, what I just miss.
Go watch the old games.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd watch the old games. I don't get into it as much. I like to see what. Again, I'm a big believer in what's going to happen next. And the NFL draft is tomorrow. Like, NFL draft is like another holiday for me, especially as a Detroit Lions fan. That we've had god-awful teams. That was your only hope, right? But you get into indicators and you say, man, if we could just get that edge rusher or that the cornerback, we could break through, right? So I just miss, besides family and friends, I'd miss the my escape into especially the NFL. I don't gamble with it. I don't do fantasy football, but I just like seeing what's happening with the teams, and I'd miss that quite a bit. I still would.
I love it. Well, I think there's an equation between you reading The Art of War and being an NFL aficionado. It's probably appropriate. Well, enjoy your holiday weekend with that in mind then. As an Eagles fan, I had to be this way, but it's not really a holiday here because we rarely draft in the top, 10. I think we've had 1 or 2 of them in the past couple of decades. But it's always, I shouldn't say that. It's always exciting because our general manager is a wheeler and dealer. So he ends up finding his way into the top 10 at some point after he's playing games on trades. So it will be fun. What's the top need? Here's the prediction for this year. Position that the Lions draft first.
If they could find the right character person, they'd take a cornerback, I think.
A cornerback.
But the Lions have been picking for folks that fit their culture, and that's why I think they've been doing better, Scott. But cornerback is what they'd take if they can get the right kind of guy.
Well, and given where they finished, like, there's no odd pick thing where there's a trade or anything, right? I mean, they're picking in the high 20s, right?
Yeah, 29.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a year of success, man. If you're picking 29, it means you had a really good early winter. So
that's good.
Good for you, Mike. It was an absolute pleasure catching up with you again, and I can't wait till we do this again 22 months from now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepointe Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepointe, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepointe, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.